Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. Happy Friday. We're going to expand the view and take a look at the Atlantic Basin. And Saharan dust is pretty common for this time of year. You can actually see all the dust that's coming off the coast of Africa. And it makes its way thousands of miles across the main development region through the Caribbean. And there's even some dust that's actually going to be inundating portions of Florida as well as into Texas this weekend. So you might actually see some hazy skies out there and some just vibrant sunsets. Typically that's pretty known and pretty common, for sunrises and sunsets, especially when you have some of that haze in the atmosphere. But if that's also going to be the culprit of kind of shutting down anything that's coming out of the main development region. Of course, we had Beryl that literally took all the steam out of the energy out in the Atlantic Basin. That's replaced with a lot of drier conditions. We do have some instability in and around the Windward Islands and portions of Florida, especially along the Carolina coast. We had a little disturbance out here, but that's not going to form anything tropical, but it is going to lead to heavier rains that's likely going to be forming and inundating a good part of South Carolina, North Carolina, back into Virginia, as well as along the coastal regions, those areas across Delaware, basically into areas of New Jersey. And if we expand the view, another big picture is the heat that's just been inundating a good part of the West Coast. I mean, we're talking numerous records being broken pretty much on a daily basis out here with this dominant ridge of high pressure really kind of locked across this region. But it's not everywhere, especially across the middle of the country and especially across the northern branch of the northern plains. That's where we have a little bit of a weakness in the ridge, and then it's also going to be areas where we're going to be seeing some showers and thunderstorms starting to develop. So if we take a look at today and some of the record high temperatures, and we've got plenty more, and in fact we got up potentially 24 everywhere you see these circled areas. That is where a projected record high, and the standout right there in Las Vegas, 116. If they're able to pull that off again today, that would be the 7th day in a row of 115 plus out there. So that has just been shattering records out there across the West. But what's going to happen as we get into the days to come, that ridge of high pressure is going to be slowly shifting off a little bit towards the east. You can see Denver there, 101, 102 today. And by the time we head into early next week across the Central Plains, that's going to be the main culprit. But look at further north across Minnesota, those areas across Iowa into Wisconsin, we're talking 80s. That's where we have the weakness in the ridge, and that's where we have the instability as well. So we are expecting some severe storms today across the Dakotas, back into areas of Nebraska, those areas into far northern branches of Kansas. And I think that just becomes a little bit more unstable as we especially getting into the weekend. And of course, off the coastal regions, complements of that little low pressure center that I showed you, that's inundating those coastal regions and actually leading to some flash flooding across a good part of the Carolinas, back into Virginia, as well as into Delaware, areas in New Jersey, getting areas into portions of the eastern areas of Pennsylvania as well. So definitely be on high alert, because some of those could lead to some, flash flooding into the heat of the afternoon, as that low pressure center will be just slowly shifting across the coastal regions along the East Coast. But heading deeper to the weekend, there is that ridge of high pressure that's going to be slowly shifting out of California, out of Nevada, and be really highly getting locked over the Four Corners regions, be shifting a little bit further off into the central U.S., and that's where we see that 594, 597 ridge of high pressure. But you can see where their weakness is, right? Those areas across the upper Midwest are going to be seeing the weakness of the ridge, and that's where the air masses are going to be definitely a little bit more unstable. So by the time we head into Sunday, now we're talking a little bit more instability in the atmosphere. We're talking a little bit stronger thunderstorms activity coming out of the northwest flow that's going to be developing across that region, back into the Dakotas again, into Minnesota. That's been inundating for a lot of heavy rain, a lot of severe storms as of late. And that will likely shift into Wisconsin, getting into the northern branch of Illinois by the time we get into later in the afternoon on Sunday, and it's going to have a lot more instability to work with, so that will likely be upgraded by the time we get closer to that event, because the Cape values already were in the 4,000 to 5,000 range. So the atmosphere is going to be extremely unstable across this region, and those could get a little bumpy, especially as we get towards later on in the afternoon and the early evening hours. So definitely be on high alert. And I think that's Sunday, but it also activates again on Monday with another little mesoscale convective vortex system that's going to be diving in off the northwest flow. That could lead to another round of showers and thunderstorms. Could be some big time hail producers, some isolated tornadoes within the mix, as well as some damaging winds of the 65-mile-per-hour variety range as those shift off to the southeast. That will also lead to some isolated flash flooding across that region as well as we head into that Monday time frame. So if you break it down for you over the next couple of days, here's where the instability is. So you, of course, where you got the ridge of high pressure under all that sinking air, it's going to be next to impossible to try to rain out of the atmosphere. It's just where you have the weakness, especially along the coastal regions, where you get a little bit more of a sea breeze action. Of course, that where that low pressure is right now highlighted across the Carolinas, that's why they do have the flash flood watches in place. But once we hit going into today, especially getting deeper into the weekend, heading into that, going into Monday morning, here is where the instability is, where the northwest flow is going to be setting up, especially across the Dakotas, back into Minnesota, into Wisconsin. Those areas will likely lead into Michigan by then, and eventually swing further south into Illinois, Indiana, as well as into Ohio, as getting into portions of western PA. But there's the high temperatures heading into Monday. With that ridge of high pressure, it'll be slowly breaking down. So instead of the 115 plus, now you're like in the 110 variety range. Still dangerously hot, but not as intense. But the ridge of high pressure will be mainly locked over the central plains. So now we're talking triple digits for a good part of Oklahoma. Kansas could even max out at 108 by the time we head into Monday afternoon, as all eyes will be further north as well, with the more of the instability, and where we're going to be seeing more widespread showers and thunderstorms and severe weather. But all that is going to lead to a fairly decent significant trough for the middle of July standards. That's definitely going to be some cooler anomalies dropping down starting on Tuesday, and I think that just really gets activated Wednesday and Thursday as we head into next week. So those areas across the upper Midwest, through the Ohio Valley, back into the areas of the Mid-Atlantic region, and getting into the Tennessee Valley, you're going to actually start cooling off in a fairly significant way, with that complements of that significant shift in the jet stream as that cooler pocket aloft starts dropping down there from Canada. But that's also going to lead to a pretty decent cold front and more instability across the Ohio Valley, with a lot of water vapor to tap into. So those storms, even on Tuesday, could get a little bit of bumpy, and some heavier rains associated with them as well through Indiana, back into Ohio, especially getting into western PA, and that will likely shift into the Kentucky region, getting deeper into the Tuesday afternoon. But going into Wednesday, that's where we have, you can see the setup on the 500 millibar. The ridge of high pressure will be slowly shifting back off to the west again. That will allow kind of the backdoor cold front to come in, if you will, with this more little significant trough diving in from the upper Midwest through the Great Lakes, back into the Mid-Atlantic, getting into the Ohio Valley, deeper into that Wednesday time frame. And that's where the leading edge of the more showers and thunderstorms will likely be the focal point by then, across this region through Kansas, back into Illinois, as well as bleeding into western areas of Tennessee, eventually heading further south, tapping into the little bit more Gulf moisture by then, back into Florida, as well as into Louisiana, and getting into Mississippi. And all that is going to lead to the breakdown getting into next week, with the main areas across the west being still locked under that ridge of high pressure. So it is right now, and it's going to be slowly shifting across the middle part of the U.S., but then by the time we head into the middle of next week again, it's going to shift backwards, allowing that trough to come back in for the upper Midwest. So it's going to be turning extremely unstable across the Dakotas, through areas of Minnesota, back into the upper Great Lakes, and then back behind that is going to lead to a fairly decent cool front by July standards, dropping into the upper Midwest, getting into the Ohio Valley by then, and especially eventually swinging further south into Kentucky and those areas into Tennessee, and then kind of get a glancing blow across areas of Oklahoma and Texas with the cooler respite to bring more closer to average instead of being above average, by then. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update while I protect you before and after the storm.